She ruled her world with diamonds, wealth, and silence, untouchable, unshakable. But when her gaze fell upon the waitress's earrings, her breath caught. They weren't just jewelry, they were ghosts. In that fragile shimmer, her walls shattered, and the past she swore to bury clawed its way back.
Hello, if you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and tap the notification bell. Type in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as touching as this one, or maybe even crazier. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's begin.
The Moreau mansion was a palace of glass and silence. Marble floors reflected chandeliers that never flickered, and not a single corner bore the chaos of ordinary life. Evelina Moreau sat at the head of her long dining table, untouched plates set neatly before her, though she had no appetite. She adjusted the diamond bracelet clasped tightly on her wrist, as if its weight reminded her she still had control over something in this world. Her housekeeper, Mari, hovered at a polite distance. "Will you be dining tonight, madam?" she asked softly. Evelina's eyes remained fixed on the empty chair at the far end of the table. It had been 10 years since her granddaughter had sat there, her laughter spilling across this cavernous room. 10 years since the accident. "No," Evelina said at last, her voice clipped, cold. "Clear it." Mari nodded, but her gaze lingered on Evelina's trembling hands. Evelina quickly hid them beneath the table. Wealth could buy silence, it could buy respect, but it could not stop the memories that crept in when the house grew too quiet. That night, Evelina stood in front of the locked door upstairs. Her hand hovered near the doorknob, then fell away. She whispered to the darkness, "Not tonight." She hadn't opened her granddaughter's room in a decade. Across town, the restaurant lights buzzed against the cool September air. The place was noisy, crowded, plates clattering, laughter bouncing from table to table. Leora James maneuvered between booths with practiced ease, balancing a tray that seemed far too heavy for her small frame. Her sneakers squeaked on the floor as she set down a sizzling plate before a group of students. "Careful, it's hot," she said with a smile she had trained herself to perfect. Inside, though, exhaustion clawed at her. She was 21, juggling 2 jobs and evening classes, her world a storm of bills and obligations. Her mother worked double shifts at the hospital, her younger brother struggled at school, and Leora carried it all like invisible luggage strapped to her back. Between orders, she ducked into the kitchen and touched the earrings that dangled from her ears. Simple silver hoops with a delicate engraving, her only inheritance from the grandmother she barely knew. Whenever she felt like she was drowning, she pressed them lightly, as though they whispered courage. "Table 12, Leora," her manager barked, snapping her back to work. She forced her smile back into place. That same evening, Evelina instructed her chauffeur to take her somewhere unfamiliar. She could no longer stand the sterile silence of private clubs and 5-star dining rooms. She wanted noise, distraction, anything to drown out the echo of her own thoughts. The car pulled up to the modest restaurant, its neon sign flickering like it might give out at any second. Evelina hesitated, her manicured fingers tightening around her clutch, but then she stepped out, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. Inside, heads turned. She carried herself like royalty, her emerald silk scarf flowing behind her. Leora noticed her immediately, the kind of customer who made managers nervous. "Don't mess this up," the manager whispered as he nudged her forward. Leora approached with her notepad, offering her standard smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Table for one?" Evelina gave the faintest nod, her eyes scanning the room as though she were out of place here, as though the chatter and clatter offended her very sense of order. She was seated at a corner booth, away from the noise. Leora poured her water, careful not to spill. Evelina's gaze lifted briefly, and lingered. For the first time in years, something unsettled her carefully composed mask. The earrings. Evelina's chest tightened, though she said nothing. Not yet. That night was ordinary for everyone else. Orders were shouted, couples argued, children spilled fries. But between Evelina and Leora, something invisible shifted. Neither woman could explain it, but both felt it, a tremor in the air, a weight in the silence. Evelina studied the menu without reading a word. Her vision kept blurring, her throat tightening with something unnameable. She was supposed to be untouchable, unreadable, but when her eyes flickered back to the earrings glimmering under the restaurant's lights, her hand clenched around her water glass until it shook. Leora felt the stare. It wasn't the usual scrutiny she got from wealthy patrons. It was heavier, almost desperate. She shifted uncomfortably, touching her earrings unconsciously as if to protect them. Their worlds, one of fortune and one of survival, had finally crossed paths. And though neither knew it yet, nothing would ever be the same. If you were in Leora's shoes, serving a stranger who stared at you with such intensity, would you feel fear, curiosity, or compassion? Comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Evelina Moreau was not a woman who trembled. Her life had been a series of poised appearances, board meetings where her signature could change fortunes, gala dinners where her smile alone determined social hierarchies. Yet here she sat, in a modest restaurant that smelled faintly of garlic and frying oil, her heart pounding like she had stepped into a storm. The waitress returned, balancing a tray with careful precision. Evelina lifted her gaze, and there they were again. The earrings. They were unmistakable. Silver hoops, delicate engravings curling along their edge, a faint shine that caught the light in just the same way as her late granddaughter's had. Evelina's breath hitched, her pulse surging. She could see as vividly as though it were yesterday the girl's laughter, her messy braid, the way she had tugged at those earrings with absent-minded affection. Her hand trembled against the table. The glass of water rattled. Are you all right, ma'am?" the waitress asked, her voice gentle, almost cautious. Evelina forced her lips to part. Where did you get those earrings?" The question escaped in a whisper, raw, stripped of its usual armor. Leora blinked, caught off guard. Her hand instinctively flew to her ear, brushing against the silver. She frowned slightly. These? They were my grandmother's. Why? Evelina's chest constricted. Her hand rose halfway, as though she could reach out and touch the earrings, confirm they were real, before she stopped herself. The room spun. The chatter of families and clatter of dishes dulled into a muted hum, as if the world had stepped aside to make room for her grief. Her voice broke. They belonged to my granddaughter. For years, she had not said the word aloud, had not dared to give shape to that loss. And now, in the middle of a crowded restaurant, it tore free. Tears burned her eyes, spilling unchecked. The diamond-hard masks she had worn for a decade crumbled in an instant. Gasps rippled through nearby tables. Patrons whispered, shocked to see her, the Evelina Moreau, fall apart like a broken child. But Evelina did not care. Leora froze, stunned by the sight. She had seen entitled customers, arrogant ones, even furious ones, but never this. Never a woman of obvious wealth and power crumbling under something unseen. Compassion stirred within her, though wariness followed close behind. I think you're mistaken, ma'am," Leora said softly, though her voice quivered. "These were passed down to me. They're all I have of her." Evelina's tears fell faster. "The engraving," she whispered hoarsely, "on the inside. Does it say—" She choked on the name. "To Clara, with love?" Leora's eyes widened. She touched the earrings as though they had become foreign, dangerous. She had never known what the small inscription meant, just that her grandmother had always called them precious. "Yes," she admitted slowly, "it does." A sob tore from Evelina's throat. Her hand flew to her mouth as she broke down completely, shaking, her shoulders heaving in a way that stripped every ounce of dignity she had cultivated. The restaurant stilled. Even the kitchen seemed quieter. Leora hovered uncertainly.
A dozen instincts fought within her, to comfort, to retreat, to demand answers. She had no idea why the stranger was weeping at the sight of her earrings, but a strange ache bloomed in her chest. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw something in Evelina's eyes that mirrored her own. Loss, loneliness, the weight of carrying too much. Finally, Evelina turned away, fumbling for her silk scarf to hide her face. She muttered, "I'm sorry." Her voice broke under the words. "I didn't mean to. Please, leave me." Leora hesitated, then nodded. She retreated quietly, her hands trembling as she clutched her notepad. But even as she served other tables, her thoughts refused to settle. Who was this stranger? And why did her earrings feel suddenly heavier, as if carrying more history than she ever realized? That night, Evelina's chauffeur guided her gently to the car. Her scarf could not hide her swollen eyes. "Are you all right, madam?" he asked carefully. She gave no reply, only clutched her handbag to her chest as if holding on to the memory of a ghost. The earrings blazed in her mind's eye, merciless, unrelenting. In the quiet of the car, Evelina whispered the name she hadn't spoken in years. Clara. Back in her tiny apartment, Leora stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She touched her earrings again, tracing the engraving with her fingertip. For the first time, they frightened her. Her grandmother had been secretive about her past, leaving Leora with only fragments of stories and this one keepsake. Could there really be a connection to that mysterious woman? And why had the sight of them shattered her so completely? The image of Evelina's tears haunted her long after she closed her eyes.
For days, Evelina could not escape the image of the earrings. They haunted her in every polished mirror of her mansion, in every silence that stretched across the marble halls. She had lived a decade in a cage of grief, training herself never to look back, never to hope. And yet, one waitress with a pair of earrings had torn down her defenses in seconds. Her butler noticed the change. "You haven't touched your tea, madam," he said quietly one morning. Evelina pushed the cup aside, her fingers trembling. "It's too sweet." It wasn't. It was exactly the same as always. But sweetness itself now felt unbearable, like it mocked the bitterness gnawing inside her. She tried to reason with herself. Perhaps the girl had stumbled upon a replica. Perhaps it was coincidence. But the engraving, no one could have forged that inscription. And yet, pride clenched its fist around her. She had spent years building her armor. She would not surrender it to a waitress. Still, her driver received a curt order. "Take me back to that restaurant." Leora noticed her immediately when Evelina returned, her emerald scarf sweeping behind her like a banner of defiance. The sight made her stomach twist. She had hoped never to see the woman again, not because she feared her, but because the memory of her tears lingered uncomfortably in her chest. She ducked behind the counter, muttering to her coworker, "I can't. Not her again." "You're up," the manager said firmly. "She asked for you." Leora's pulse quickened. Of course she had asked for her. The woman's sharp gaze followed her as she approached the booth. "Good evening," Leora said, her tone clipped. "Water again?" Evelina ignored the question. Her eyes went straight to the earrings. "Do you even know what you're wearing?" The bluntness made Leora flinch. "They're my grandmother's." "That's all." "That's not all," Evelina said low, tight with suppressed emotion. "Those earrings belong to someone very dear to me." The words struck Leora like an accusation. She folded her arms across her chest. "Well, they belong to me now, and I'm not about to hand them over." Evelina recoiled slightly, stung. "I didn't say I wanted them. I want answers." "I don't have any for you," Leora said, her voice sharp. "I don't know who you are, and frankly, I don't care. You made a scene last time. Please, don't do it again." The silence between them was thick, every unsaid word pressing against the air. Evelina's pride surged. "Very well," she said icily. "Enjoy your shift." But as Leora walked away, she could feel the weight of the woman's stare burning into her back. That night, Leora tried to push it from her mind.
She had homework to finish, bills to calculate, siblings to check on. Life didn't stop because of one weeping stranger. And yet, when she lay in bed, she replayed the conversation again and again. The way Evelina's voice cracked, the strange desperation in her eyes, the certainty in her words. Her grandmother had always been vague about her past, almost secretive. Could there have been more to the story than Leora realized? She shook her head fiercely. "No," she muttered into the dark, "she's just some rich woman who thinks the world belongs to her." But even her own voice sounded uncertain. Evelina, meanwhile, poured herself a glass of wine she didn't drink. She stared at it for hours, then set it aside untouched. Every instinct told her to walk away, to bury this as she had buried everything else. But she couldn't. In the lonely hours before dawn, she whispered to the empty air, "She looks like her. The same fire, the same stubbornness." Her voice broke. "But she can't be. She can't." The tension grew with each visit. Evelina returned again and again under flimsy excuses. Leora grew sharper each time, refusing to indulge her. One evening, as Evelina lingered longer than usual, Leora finally snapped. "Why do you keep coming back here?" she demanded. "You don't belong in this place. People like you," she gestured at Evelina's silk scarf, her jeweled rings, her perfect posture. "You have your own world. Why are you forcing yourself into mine?" Evelina's lips parted, but the truth stuck in her throat. Pride surged instead. "Because I can." The words cut. Leora stiffened, turned on her heel, and left her alone in the booth. That night, both women lay awake in different worlds, chained by the same storm of emotions: suspicion, pride, grief, and the quiet, relentless pull of something neither could name. The first cold winds of October swept through the city, scattering leaves across cracked sidewalks. Leora hunched her shoulders against the chill as she left the restaurant after her late shift. Her sneakers were worn thin, her coat too light for the season, but she quickened her pace through the dim streets. Her phone buzzed. It was her mother. "Leora?" The woman's voice was tight, strained. "The landlord gave us a notice. We've got 2 weeks to catch up on the rent, or—" She trailed off, but Leora knew the rest. Eviction. "I'll figure something out," Leora said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Don't worry, Mom. Just focus on your shift." When she hung up, her throat ached. She wanted to scream, to cry, but instead she dug her hands into her pockets and walked faster. Her earrings brushed against her neck, small weights of comfort. The next evening, Evelina sat in the back of her limousine, the city lights flickering across her face. She had instructed her driver to take her to the opera, but as the car passed through the quieter side streets, her gaze caught on something— Leora. The girl was sitting on the curb outside a laundromat, hugging her knees to her chest, while a younger boy, her brother, Evelina guessed, dozed against her shoulder. A basket of clothes sat at their feet. The sight pierced Evelina like a blade. "Stop the car," Evelina ordered. The chauffeur hesitated. "Here, madam?" "Now." She stepped out, the chill instantly biting through her cashmere coat. For a long moment, she simply watched, Leora brushing her brother's hair back gently, her face weary but tender. Evelina's throat tightened. It was a picture of love, raw and unpolished, so unlike the sterile perfection of her mansion. Finally, Leora noticed her. She stiffened immediately, eyes narrowing. "Are you following me?" Evelina shook her head. "No, but it seems fate keeps pushing us together." Leora stood quickly, her brother stirring at the sudden movement. "We don't need your pity," she snapped. "Go back to your world, Mrs. whatever your name is." Moreau. Evelina Moreau. Recognition flickered in Leora's eyes. The millionaire. Figures. Her arms tightened protectively around her brother. People like you think you can buy anything." Evelina hesitated. Pride warred with compassion, but compassion won, if only barely. "Not everything," she admitted. "Not what I've lost." Her gaze fell on the earrings again. Leora bristled. "Why are you really here?" Instead of answering, Evelina surprised herself. "Because you look like someone I loved, and because I think you need help, whether you'll admit it or not." That night marked the beginning of their reluctant entanglement. Evelina returned days later, this time at Leora's apartment. She had sent her assistant to quietly cover the overdue rent. When Leora discovered it, she stormed into the restaurant where Evelina sat waiting. "How dare you?" she hissed, slamming her notepad on the table. "You paid our rent without asking? Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" Evelina's jaw tightened. "Would you rather your family sleep on the street?" "That's not the point," Leora's voice cracked. "We manage. We always manage. We don't need your charity." Evelina leaned forward, her eyes sharp but glistening. "This isn't charity. It's atonement." The word stunned Leora. Atonement? For what? Evelina looked away, her throat closing. She couldn't answer. Not yet. In the days that followed, circumstances only tightened their bond. Leora's younger brother fell ill, and Evelina insisted on driving them to the hospital when the bus failed to arrive. In the sterile waiting room, they sat side by side, silence heavy between them. Leora tried to push Evelina away, tried to hate her interference, but every time she looked at the older woman's trembling hands, she felt something she didn't want to name: compassion, connection, maybe even kinship. Evelina, for her part, found herself drawn to Leora's resilience, the way she cared for her family, the way she endured her hardships with fire in her eyes. It was hauntingly familiar. It was Clara all over again. And though neither of them said it, they both knew they were being pulled into each other's orbits by something stronger than choice. Do you believe fate has a way of forcing people into each other's lives for a reason? Or is it all coincidence? Share your thoughts. I'd love to know what you think.
The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, their sterile glow settling uneasily on Evelina's shoulders as she sat in the waiting room. Leora's younger brother was inside with the doctor, her mother finally arriving to take over. For the first time since that night in the restaurant, Leora allowed herself to sit beside Evelina in relative stillness. Neither spoke for a while. The hum of machines, the shuffle of nurses, and the occasional cry of a child filled the silence. At last, Leora's voice cut through, low and cautious. "You keep looking at me like I'm a ghost. Why?" Evelina's hands tightened around her handbag. She had sworn never to open the locked door in her heart again. But the girl sitting next to her, with her grandmother's earrings and her granddaughter's fire, left her no choice. "My granddaughter," Evelina whispered. "Her name was Clara. She wore earrings exactly like yours. They were the last gift I ever gave her." Leora's breath caught. She looked down at the earrings as if they had grown heavier. "Clara," she repeated softly. "My grandmother never mentioned a Clara. She just said these earrings were family. She didn't say how." Evelina's gaze drifted, unfocused, as if trapped in memory. Clara was light itself. Laughter, stubbornness, dreams bigger than the world. She died when she was 17. An accident. My son blamed me for it. He said my wealth spoiled her, gave her too much freedom. He left me that night and never came back. Her voice cracked. I lost them both in one evening, and I've lived alone ever since. The words hung in the air, sharp and painful. Evelina pressed her handkerchief to her lips, fighting to steady herself. Leora studied her quietly. The arrogance she had despised in Evelina seemed to slip away with every word, replaced with raw sorrow. Against her will, compassion stirred. "My father left us too," Leora admitted finally, her voice brittle. "I don't even remember him. My mom raised me and my brother by herself. She always worked double shifts, and She stopped, swallowing hard. "I don't know why I'm telling you this." Evelina turned her head, her eyes soft for the first time. "Because pain recognizes pain." Leora looked away quickly, blinking against tears. She hated that the words struck home. Later that week, Leora found herself outside Evelina's mansion, not by choice, but because Evelina had insisted on giving her a ride home and just a cup of tea before she left. The mansion loomed, its stone facade grand yet strangely hollow. Inside, the silence pressed down on Leora like a weight. She followed Evelina through glittering halls until they reached a corridor where Evelina paused. At the end of it stood a locked door. Evelina's hand hovered near the handle, trembling. This was Clara's room. "I haven't been inside since she left." Leora felt a strange pull toward it. "Why not?" "Because opening it means admitting she's gone, and I'm not strong enough for that." The honesty startled Leora. For the first time, she saw not the millionaire, not the woman draped in silk and diamonds, but a grandmother crippled with grief. They didn't open the door. Not yet. But the unspoken invitation hung between them. Days passed, and little by little, pieces of the past emerged. Evelina spoke of Clara's love for art, her laughter that filled the halls, the way she had once insisted on serving tea in plastic cups instead of china, because it tasted freer that way. In turn, Leora revealed fragments of her own story. Her grandmother, Margaret, had raised her for a time when her mother was overwhelmed. Margaret had given her the earrings on her 16th birthday, telling her only, "These belong to a story bigger than you. Someday you'll understand." The more they shared, the more the air thickened with questions neither dared to voice. One evening, Evelina studied Leora's face closely in the dim light of the mansion's library. "You remind me of him," she murmured. "Who?" asked Leora. "My son." Evelina's voice was fragile, almost broken. "The same eyes, the same anger burning just beneath the skin." Leora froze. She wanted to dismiss it, to laugh it off, but something in Evelina's tone made her chest tighten. "What are you saying?" she asked carefully. Evelina shook her head quickly, retreating into silence. "Nothing, just memories playing tricks." But Leora didn't believe her. That night, back in her tiny apartment, Leora turned the earrings over and over in her hand. The engraving glinted under the lamplight. "To Clara, with love." She whispered into the empty room. "Who are you really, Grandma? And what do you have to do with her?" The questions echoed long after she lay down to sleep. And though neither woman knew it yet, the truth was circling closer, ready to tear open everything they thought they knew.
The first snow of the season fell like powdered sugar over the city, softening its edges. Leora walked up the steps of Evelina's mansion reluctantly, brushing flakes from her coat. She had told herself a dozen times not to come back, that she didn't belong in this world of chandeliers and polished floors, but Evelina had insisted. "Just dinner," she had said, "no strings. I'd like the company." Inside, the warmth of the fire softened the marble's coldness. Evelina had traded her formal gowns for a soft cashmere sweater, her hair pinned loosely. She almost looked ordinary. "Sit," Evelina said gently, gesturing to the dining table. "I made soup. Well, Mary made soup, but I supervised." Leora smirked beside herself. "So you stood there and told her to add more salt?" Evelina's lips twitched. "Exactly." The banter surprised them both. For once the air wasn't sharp with tension.
They ate slowly, the soup rich and comforting. Evelina watched as Leora dipped bread into her bowl, her movements quick and unpretentious. For the first time in years, Evelina didn't feel the crushing weight of silence at her dining table. "You're different when you're not in silk and diamonds," Leora said suddenly, her tone soft. Evelina arched her brow. "And you're different when you're not balancing 5 plates and pretending to smile." Leora laughed, the sound filling the cavernous room. Evelina's heart clenched, so achingly familiar. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over her. After dinner, Evelina surprised Leora by leading her into the library. Books lined every wall, their spines gleaming. Evelina poured 2 cups of tea and set them on the low table. "Clara loved this room," Evelina said quietly. "She'd sit on the floor with stacks of books taller than herself. She used to read me stories aloud, even when she barely understood the words." Leora smiled faintly. "I used to do the same with my brother, made him listen to fairy tales until he fell asleep." Their eyes met across the room. For the first time, the thread between them felt less like a wound and more like a bridge. Over the next weeks, their lives intertwined in small, unexpected ways. Evelina accompanied Leora to the hospital again when her brother's fever returned, sitting with her through the night. She didn't speak much, but her presence was steady, her hand occasionally brushing Leora's in quiet reassurance. Leora, in turn, brought Evelina to the city park on her day off. They sat on a weathered bench, sipping cheap hot chocolate from paper cups. Children's laughter echoed in the crisp air, and for the first time in years, Evelina's lips curved into an unguarded smile. "You don't taste enough ordinary life," Leora teased, bumping her shoulder lightly. "And you don't taste enough sweetness," Evelina countered, holding up her cup. "Not everything bitter has to be endured." The words lingered between them, heavier than hot chocolate steam. One evening, as snow piled against the mansion windows, Leora convinced Evelina to try cooking together. It was chaos. Evelina measured salt with surgical precision, while Leora tossed handfuls of spices with abandon. They bickered over recipes, laughed when Evelina nearly set a towel on fire, and ended up eating a half-burnt meal on the kitchen counter, their laughter echoing like a song neither realized they'd been missing. Evelina looked at Leora, really looked, and her chest ached with something terrifyingly close to joy. "I don't remember the last time I laughed like this," she admitted softly. "Me neither." Leora swallowed hard, suddenly self-conscious. For a long moment they sat in comfortable silence, the kind that felt less like emptiness and more like safety. But beneath the warmth, shadows lingered. Evelina still hadn't spoken the truth about her son. Leora still didn't know the full story of her grandmother. Both carried questions they were afraid to ask. And yet, for the first time, both allowed themselves to imagine what it might feel like if this fragile bond could last. The earrings glinted in the firelight that night as Evelina whispered, almost to herself, "It feels like you've always belonged here." Leora didn't answer, but in her heart, she knew it wanted to be true. The warmth of their laughter still echoed in Evelina's mansion when the past came knocking, literally. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind of winter day when snow muffled the city into silence. Leora was curled on the sofa with a book from Evelina's library, her earrings catching the firelight when the doorbell rang. Evelina went to answer it, her steps hesitant. On the threshold stood a man she hadn't seen in 20 years. "Mother!" His voice was sharp, almost accusatory. Evelina's breath left her in a rush. "Adrian!" Leora glanced up at the name. Her heart jolted. Adrian, the name her mother had whispered once when she thought Leora wasn't listening. The name of the father who had disappeared. Adrian's gaze fell on Leora almost instantly. He froze, his face draining of color. "Who is she?" Evelina opened her mouth, but no words came. Leora stood, her chest tight. "I should be asking you that. Who are you?" Adrian's eyes darkened. "I'd recognize those eyes anywhere." His voice wavered, then hardened. "You shouldn't be here." Leora blinked, stunned. "What are you talking about?" He turned to Evelina, fury trembling in his voice.
You brought her here? After everything? After what you cost us? Evelina's lips parted, but she faltered. Adrian, please! No! Leora snapped, her voice shaking. Enough secrets! Someone tell me what's going on! The silence that followed was unbearable. Evelina's hands trembled as she reached for the back of a chair. Leora, she whispered, Adrian is my son, Clara's father. The words detonated in the room. Leora stumbled back as if struck. Her eyes darted from Evelina to Adrian, then back again. Your son? That means you're... Her voice cracked. That means you're my grandmother? Evelina's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I think so. Margaret was Adrian's wife. Her voice broke. You're Clara's cousin. Leora's stomach twisted violently. The room spun. You knew. You must have known. That's why you kept staring at me. That's why you wouldn't let go. Evelina shook her head desperately. I suspected, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want to hurt you if... Don't lie to me. Leora's shout echoed through the high ceilings. You've been playing me this whole time, pitying me, controlling me, paying my rent like I'm some charity case. Adrian's voice cut in, cold and venomous. She hasn't changed. She ruins everything she touches. Evelina flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. I was trying to make it right, to make something right. But Leora was already pulling on her coat, her movements sharp and furious. You had your chance 20 years ago. Don't drag me into your guilt now. Leora, wait! Evelina's voice cracked like glass. But the slam of the door was her only answer. The snow swallowed Leora as she ran down the street, her breaths ragged, her chest burning. Her earrings bounced against her neck like cruel reminders. She ripped them off and stuffed them into her pocket, choking on sobs she had fought for years. She had let herself believe, just for a moment, that she belonged somewhere, that Evelina's mansion, Evelina's laughter, Evelina's tenderness could mean family. But it was all a lie. And in the silent mansion, Evelina collapsed into the chair by the fire, clutching the empty air where Leora had stood. For the second time in her life, she felt the unbearable weight of losing a granddaughter. If you discovered someone you trusted had been keeping such a life-altering secret, would you walk away in anger, like Leora, or stay to hear the full truth? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
The city was still wrapped in snow when Leora reached her apartment. She dropped onto the couch without even taking off her coat, her body shivering though the room was warm. The earrings lay heavy in her palm, their delicate silver cutting into her skin. She wanted to throw them across the room, to bury them in a drawer, to erase the night from her memory. But she couldn't. Her grandmother's voice echoed faintly in her mind. These belong to a story bigger than you. Someday you'll understand. The truth clawed at her from every angle. Evelina was family, the woman she had laughed with, argued with, shared meals with. She was her blood. And Adrian, her father, the man she had dreamed of meeting, was alive, bitter, and standing in a mansion she now wished she had never entered. Her chest tightened. Family had always been her anchor, even in poverty, even in struggle. But now, family felt like a wound. Across the city, Evelina sat in her darkened library, staring at the cold ashes in the fireplace. Her son had stormed out hours ago, leaving her house steeped in silence. She had thought she was strong enough to face him. She had rehearsed her apologies for 20 years, but the venom in his words reopened every scar. And Leora. Evelina closed her eyes, her body trembling. She could still hear the girl's laughter in her kitchen, see her stubborn fire at the dining table. She had dared to hope,
just for a moment, that she could have another chance at family, at love. Now it was gone, again. She pressed her hand over her heart, whispering into the empty room, "Clara, if you can hear me, tell me what to do. Tell me how to reach her." The days crawled by. Leora buried herself in extra shifts, pouring coffee with mechanical precision, keeping her voice clipped and distant. Her co-workers noticed the change, but she brushed off their questions with brittle smiles. At night, she lay awake, staring at the earrings on her nightstand, anger and longing warring inside her. Evelina, meanwhile, wandered her mansion like a ghost. Meals went untouched, the library felt hollow, even the music of Clara's old piano seemed too painful to hear. She drafted letters, 6 of them, some full of apology, others stiff with pride. Each time she tore the paper into pieces. At last, one night, she sat down with pen and paper and forced herself to write the only words she hadn't dared before. "Leora, I am sorry. I should have told you sooner. I don't want to lose you too. Please, just one more chance to explain. If you can't forgive me, I'll understand, but let me at least tell you everything." She sealed the letter with trembling hands and sent it by courier the next morning. When the envelope arrived, Leora almost threw it away unopened. But something, curiosity, stubbornness, maybe even the faint echo of Evelina's laughter, made her slide her finger under the seal. The words were messy, raw, nothing like the polished speeches Evelina had used before. Leora read the letter 3 times, tears pricking her eyes each time. For hours, she sat at the kitchen table, the letter beside her, the earrings in her hand. The war inside her raged. Walk away, protect yourself, or go back and risk being hurt again. That evening, she found herself walking through snow-dusted streets, her breath forming clouds in the icy air. She didn't know where her feet were taking her until she was standing in front of the mansion gates. She hesitated. The lights glowed warmly inside, but the house still looked daunting, foreign, like a world that wasn't her own. Her hand gripped the earrings tightly. She turned away once, heart pounding, but then she thought of her brother, her mother, her grandmother, of the legacy hidden in those earrings, of the families she had always longed for, and she turned back. Inside, Evelina sat in her chair, her letter still etched in her mind, when she heard a hesitant knock at the door. Her heart leapt, then stopped. She rose slowly, her hands trembling, and opened the door. There stood Leora, pale from the cold, her earrings glinting faintly in the snowlight. They stared at each other for a long moment, words stuck in both their throats. At last, Evelina whispered, "You came." Leora's eyes shimmered, her jaw tight. "Don't make me regret it." And with that, the choice had been made.
The mansion's foyer was heavy with silence as Evelina closed the door behind Leora. Snow melted from the girl's coat onto the marble floor, forming small puddles that glistened in the golden light. Neither moved at first. Evelina's hands shook at her sides, but she forced herself to meet Leora's guarded gaze. "Thank you for coming," Evelina whispered. "I almost didn't," Leora admitted, her voice brittle. "I don't know if I can trust you." Evelina's throat tightened, but she nodded. "You shouldn't, not yet. But you deserve the truth, all of it." She led Leora into the library, the fire crackling softly. Evelina gestured for her to sit, but Leora remained standing, her arms crossed tightly. Evelina drew in a long breath. "Adrian was your father. He was my only son. When Clara died, he blamed me, said I smothered her with money, let her drift too far. That night, he walked out. I begged him to stay, but he was furious. He left the country, and for years I didn't hear a word." Her eyes glistened. "I didn't even know he had met your mother. I didn't know about you until I saw those earrings, and it was like seeing Clara again." Leora's breath trembled. "And you didn't tell me right away because I was afraid," Evelina admitted. "Afraid that if I claimed you, I'd lose you too. Afraid you'd look at me the way Adrian did, with hatred." Her voice broke. "And I couldn't survive that again." Leora turned away, staring into the fire. She wanted to stay angry, to cling to the betrayal. But the rawness in Evelina's voice, the tears shining on her cheeks, it cracked something inside her. A soft knock interrupted them. The butler entered, his expression nervous. "Madam, your son has returned. He insists on seeing you." Evelina froze. Leora's heart thudded painfully. Moments later, Adrian strode into the library. His eyes flicked to Leora, then to Evelina. "So it's true," he spat. "You've dragged her into this circus." Evelina stood tall, though her hands trembled. "She's your daughter, Adrian. You have no right to call her a mistake." Adrian's face contorted. "I never wanted her dragged into your poison." "Enough," Leora's voice rang out, startling them both. Her eyes burned as she stepped forward. "I spent my whole life wondering who my father was, wishing for him. Do you know what that does to a child? To have an empty chair at every birthday? To watch your mom break her back just to keep us fed?" Adrian flinched, his anger faltering. Leora's voice cracked. "And now that I know, all I get is your hate? Do you even see me? I'm not a pawn between you and her. I'm your daughter." The silence that followed was suffocating. Adrian's jaw worked, but no words came. For the first time, Evelina saw the pain in his eyes, buried beneath years of rage. Evelina stepped forward, her voice steady but soft. "We've all lost too much. Clara, the years, each other. If we keep tearing apart what little we have left, then grief has truly won." Her gaze shifted to Leora. "I can't fix the past, but I can love you if you'll let me." Leora's chest ached. The earrings in her palm grew hot with meaning. She saw her grandmother's weary smile, her mother's sacrifices, her brother's innocent eyes. She saw Clara's name engraved inside the silver, tying every broken piece together. Slowly, she looked at Evelina, then at Adrian. "I don't know if I can forgive either of you right now," she said honestly, "but I don't want to carry hate. I want family, real family. No more secrets, no more lies." Her voice steadied. "So the choice is yours. Do you want that too?" The fire popped, filling the silence. Evelina's tears spilled freely as she nodded. "Yes, more than anything." Adrian hesitated, his pride a wall he'd built for decades. But as he looked at his daughter, the girl with his eyes and his mother's fire, the wall began to crack. His shoulders slumped. "I don't know how, but I want to try." For the first time, hope flickered in Leora's chest. She sank slowly into the chair, exhaustion and relief flooding her. Evelina reached out a trembling hand. After a long moment, Leora took it. The bond was fragile, imperfect, and scarred by years of pain, but it was there. Later that evening, as Leora prepared to leave, Evelina pressed a velvet box in her hand. Inside was a matching necklace, engraved with the same delicate initials. "To Clara, with love." Evelina's voice broke. "It's yours now, not as charity, not as attention, but as a reminder that you belong to this family, no matter how broken it has been." Leora's throat tightened. For once, she didn't argue. She simply nodded, clutching the necklace close. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the world hushed and glistening. For the first time in years, Evelina stepped into the doorway to watch someone she loved walk away, not in loss, but in hope that they would return. And Leora, with the earrings brushing her neck and the necklace warm in her hand, felt the weight of grief begin to shift into something lighter. Not perfect, not healed overnight, but family. If you were in Leora's place, would you take the risk of building a relationship with family who once hurt you, or would you walk away to protect yourself? Share your thoughts below.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you loved this story, you will definitely love the next one. It's more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So go ahead and watch it now. Click on the image on your screen right away to watch the next one. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It helps and encourages us to share the best human interest stories you'd love.